The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the bustling streets of London's West End. Tourists moved in waves between shops, their cameras clicking at everything from red telephone booths to street performers. Among them walked Jason Statham, dressed simply in a black jacket and jeans, a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He preferred anonymity when he could get it, which wasn't often these days. But on this particular Thursday, nobody had recognized him yet, and he intended to keep it that way. He'd just finished a meeting with his agent about his next film project and decided to walk back to his car rather than call for a driver. The city had a different energy when you moved through it on foot, when you weren't insulated by tinted windows and air conditioning. Jason had grown up on these streets, back before the fame and the Hollywood mansions. Sometimes he needed to remember what real life felt like. The crowd thickened near Oxford Street, where shoppers poured out of department stores carrying bags emblazoned with designer logos. Jason navigated through them with practiced ease, his years of martial arts training evident in the fluid way he moved. He was passing a narrow alley between two buildings when he heard the first raised voice. "I told you to stay away from him." A man's voice, sharp with anger. Jason's instincts kicked in immediately, his body tense, his awareness sharpening. He'd learned long ago to trust these moments of heightened perception. They'd saved his life more than once during his younger, rougher years. He slowed his pace, angling toward the alley without making it obvious. "He's just a friend. I can talk to whoever I want." A younger voice, female, defiant but trembling. Jason stopped at the alley's entrance, pretending to check his phone while his eyes adjusted to the dimmer light. About 20 feet in, he could make out two figures. A large man in his 30s, powerfully built with tattooed forearms, stood over a girl who couldn't have been more than 19. She had long dark hair and was wearing a server's uniform from one of the nearby restaurants. Her back was pressed against the brick wall, her hands raised offensively. "Don't tell me what you can do," the man snarled, stepping closer. "You belong to me. When are you going to get that through your thick skull?" The girl tried to move past him, but he grabbed her arm roughly, his fingers digging into her flesh. She winced, trying to pull away. "Let go of me, Derek. We're done. I already told you that." Derek's face contorted with rage. "We're done when I say we're done." Jason felt his jaw tighten. He'd seen this scene play out too many times in his life. Growing up in Shirebrook, he'd watched his own mother struggle against men who thought they owned her. He'd promised himself as a boy that he'd never stand by and let it happen to someone else. But he also knew that rushing could make things worse. Abusive men were unpredictable, especially when they felt their control slipping. If he intervened wrong, the girl could get hurt worse. He needed to assess the situation carefully, watch for the right moment. The man shook the girl hard enough that her head snapped back. "You think you can just walk away from me? After everything I've done for you?" "You mean after everything you've done to me?" She shot back, her voice breaking. "The bruises, the control, the way you check my phone every 5 minutes. That's not love, Derek. That's prison." Jason saw the man's hand boil into a fist, saw the familiar tension in his shoulders. He'd sparred with enough fighters to recognize the body language that preceded violence. This was it, the moment before impact, the split second where everything could change. He took one step forward, then another, moving silently on the balls of his feet. The couple was so focused on each other, they hadn't noticed him yet. Jason calculated distances, angles, the most efficient way to neutralize the threat without causing permanent damage. Despite his fury at what he was witnessing, he remained calm. Emotion got you killed. Control kept you alive. Derek raised his fist higher, his face twisted with fury. The girl closed her eyes, bracing for the blow she knew was coming. And in that frozen moment, Jason Statham made his move. Jason covered the distance in 3 swift strides, his shoes making only the softest whisper against the pavement. Derek's fist was already in motion, arcing toward the girl's face with vicious intent. Jason's hand shot out like a striking snake, his fingers wrapping around Derek's wrist mid-swing. The impact of stopping that momentum sent a shock up Derek's arm, and his eyes went wide with surprise and pain. "I don't think she wants you touching her," Jason said quietly, his voice carrying an edge that could cut steel. Derek spun around, trying to yank his arm free, but Jason's grip was ironclad. Years of training in Wing Chun, kickboxing, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu had given him hands that could bend iron bars. Derek was strong, but strength without technique was nothing. "Who the hell are you?" Derek snarled, finally pulling his arm back. He was bigger than Jason by at least 30 pounds, most of it muscle from what looked like dedicated gym time. The kind of guy who thought size equaled dominance. "Someone who doesn't like bullies," Jason replied, positioning himself between Derek and the girl. He could hear her breathing behind him, fast and shallow. "The lady said she's done with you. Time to accept that and walk away." Derek's face flushed red. "This is none of your business. This is between me and my girlfriend." "Ex-girlfriend," the girl said from behind Jason, her voice stronger now that someone stood with her. "I broke up with you 2 weeks ago. Derek, you just won't accept it." "Shut up," Derek shouted, trying to step around Jason to get to her. Jason moved with him, maintaining the barrier between them. "She's not going to shut up, and you're not going to touch her. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to turn around and leave. Right now." Derek laughed, but there was no humor in it. "And if I don't, what are you going to do about it, old man?" Jason was 49 years old, but he was in better shape than most men half his age. Still, he didn't take the bait. "Ego got you hurt. I'm giving you a chance to walk away with your dignity intact. I'd suggest taking it." "I don't need chances from some random guy in an alley," Derek said, and threw a punch. It was a wide, telegraph right hook, the kind of punch thrown by someone who'd won plenty of bar fights against drunk opponents, but never trained properly. Jason slipped it easily, his head moving just enough to let Derek's fist sail past his ear. In the same motion, Jason drove his palm into Derek's solar plexus, a precise strike that emptied his lungs and sent him staggering backward. Derek wheezed, struggling to breathe, his eyes watering. You hit me." "That wasn't a hit," Jason said calmly. "That was a warning. You want to see what an actual hit looks like. Keep trying to hurt her." The girl gasped behind him. "Oh my God, you're Jason Statham." Jason didn't turn around, keeping his eyes locked on Derek, who was still trying to catch his breath. "Right now, I'm just someone who doesn't like seeing women get hurt." Derek straightened up, his face a mask of humiliation and rage. Men like him couldn't stand being beaten, especially in front of the women they tried to control. Jason knew what was coming next. He could see it in Derek's eyes, that desperate need to reassert dominance. "You think you're tough because you make movies." Derek spat. "Those are fake punches. Mate, this is real life." He rushed forward, throwing multiple punches in combination. Jason parried the first two, absorbed the third on his shoulder, and then swept Derek's legs out from under him with a low kick that dropped him hard onto the concrete. Derek landed with a grunt, the air rushing out of him again. "Stay down," Jason advised. "You're outmatched and you know it." But Derek wasn't thinking clearly anymore. He scrambled to his feet and reached into his jacket. Jason's body reacted before his mind could process what was happening. He closed the distance instantly, his hand clamping down on Derek's wrist before he could pull whatever he was reaching for. With a sharp twist, Jason disarmed him and swept his legs again, this time controlling his descent so Derek landed on his back rather than his head. A knife clattered across the ground, its blade catching the light. "Jesus Christ," the girl breathed. Jason planted his knee on Derek's chest, pinning him down. His hand pressed against Derek's throat, not choking him but making the threat clear. "That was the stupidest thing you could have done. Now we've gone from assault to attempted murder with a deadly weapon." Derek's bravado finally cracked, fear replacing the anger in his eyes. "I wasn't going to use it. I just wanted to scare you." "Mission failed," Jason said. He looked up at the girl. "Call the police. Right now." She fumbled for her phone with shaking hands, nearly dropping it twice before managing to unlock it. As she dialed, Jason kept Derek pinned, his knee applying just enough pressure to keep the man immobile without causing injury. "Police, what's your emergency?" The operator's voice was tinny through the phone speaker. The girl's voice wavered as she spoke. "There's a man with a knife. He tried to attack me and someone else. We're in the alley between Oxford Street and—" Jason listened as she gave a location, his attention split between Derek beneath him and their surroundings. The girl's name was Emma Clark, and as I waited for the police to arrive, she told her story in fragments, her words spilling out between shaky breaths. Jason kept Derek pinned but loosened his grip slightly, enough to let the man breathe easier but not enough to let him move. The knife lay several feet away, and Jason had positioned himself so Derek couldn't make a grab for it. "We met 8 months ago," Emma said, pacing near the alley entrance where she could see the street. "He seemed nice at first. Charming. He'd wait for me after work with flowers, pay attention when I talked, make me feel special." Jason nodded slightly, never taking his eyes off Derek. "That's how it always starts." "Then things changed," Emma continued, her voice hardening. "Little things at first. He'd get upset if I didn't text him back fast enough. He wanted to know where I was every minute, who I was with. He said it was because he loved me so much." "It wasn't love," Jason said quietly. "It was control." Derek tried to speak, but Jason pressed his knee down slightly. "You don't get to talk right now. You had your chance to do the right thing. You chose violence instead." Emma wrapped her arms around herself despite the warm afternoon. 3 months ago, he hit me for the first time. I was talking to a male customer at the restaurant, just being friendly, doing my job. Derek was waiting outside. When my shift ended, he dragged me into his car and backhanded me across the face. Jason felt the old anger rising in his chest, the same fury he felt as a boy watching his mother suffer. He forced it down, channeling it into focus. Anger made you sloppy. Control kept you effective. "I should have left then," Emma said, tears starting to stream down her face. "But he cried. He apologized. He said it would never happen again. He bought me jewelry, took me to nice restaurants, promised he'd get help." "Let me guess," Jason said. "It happened again." Emma nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Again and again. Each time he'd be sorry afterward. Each time he'd promise to change. But the violence got worse. He started tracking my phone. He'd show up at work unannounced to make sure I wasn't talking to other men. He isolated me from my friends, made me feel like I was crazy for being upset." Beneath Jason's knee, Derek squirmed. "That's not true. I loved you. I was trying to protect you." "From what?" Emma shouted, her voice echoing off the alley walls. "From having a life? From having friends? From being my own person." Jason pressed down harder, silencing Derek again. "How long since you tried to leave?" 2 weeks ago, I moved out while he was at work. I stayed with my sister. I blocked his number, blocked him on social media, everything. But he found me anyway. He'd wait outside my work, follow me home. He sent me hundreds of messages from different numbers. He said if he couldn't have me, nobody could. The classic threat of an abuser losing control, Jason thought. The most dangerous time for victims of domestic violence was when they tried to leave. Statistics showed that 75% of domestic violence murders happened after the victim had ended the relationship. "Today was supposed to be my first day back at work," Emma continued. "My manager changed my schedule, put me on earlier shifts so I'd be done before Derek usually showed up. But somehow he knew. He was waiting for me when I clocked out." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Jason could see Emma visibly relax at the sound. Help was coming. She wouldn't have to face this alone anymore. "What you did today could have killed her," Jason said to Derek, his voice low and intense. "That punch you were throwing was aimed at her temple. Do you have any idea how fragile the human skull is in that spot? You could have caused a brain bleed, a skull fracture, death." "I wasn't going to actually hit her," Derek mumbled. "Your fist was in motion. Your body weight was behind it. You were absolutely going to hit her." Jason leaned closer, making sure Derek could see his eyes. "And then you pulled a knife on someone trying to protect her. You've crossed so many lines today that you're going to prison. That's not a threat. That's a fact." 2 police cars pulled up at the alley entrance, their blue lights washing everything in alternating darkness and illumination. 4 officers emerged, hands near their belts, approaching cautiously. "Armed police. Nobody move." Jason carefully raised his hands, palms out, keeping his knee on Derek's chest. "Jason Statham. I witnessed an assault and intervened. The suspect pulled a knife on me. The weapon is approximately 2 meters to my left. One of the officers, a woman in her 30s with sharp eyes, approached slowly. Mr. Statham, I'm going to need you to step away from the suspect. Jason complied immediately, rising smoothly and backing away with his hands visible. 2 other officers moved in quickly, flipping Derek onto his stomach and cuffing him with practiced efficiency. Derek didn't resist, all the fight gone out of him now that real consequences had arrived. The female officer turned to Emma. Are you injured, miss? Emma shook her head. Not today, but has hurt me before. I have pictures, documentation. We're going to need you to make a full statement, the officer said gently. Both of you. As they led Derek away, he looked back at Emma one last time. I'm sorry. I really do love you. Emma's voice was steady when she replied. No, you don't. You never did. Because love doesn't hurt. The police station interview room was small and fluorescent lit, the kind of place that felt disconnected from the real world. Jason sat across from Detective Inspector Sarah Michaels, a 15-year veteran of the Metropolitan Police who'd seen enough domestic violence cases to fill a cemetery. She'd taken his statement methodically, her recorder capturing every detail. You've got good instincts, Mr. Statham, she said, clicking her pen. Most people would have walked past, convinced themselves it wasn't their business. I couldn't do that, Jason replied simply. I've seen what happens when people walk past. Detective Michaels nodded, understanding in her eyes. Your statement matches Emma Clark's perfectly. Derek Turner has a history with us. 3 previous partners filed restraining orders against him over the past 6 years. One ended up hospitalized with a fractured jaw. Jason felt his hands tighten on the arms of his chair. Why was he walking free? Because the system is broken, the detective said bluntly. Restraining orders are paper shields. They only work if the perpetrator respects them, and men like Derek Turner don't respect anything except force. The previous victims were too scared to testify when it came to trial. Without their testimony, we couldn't make the charges stick. Will Emma testify? She says she will, and with you as a witness, with a knife he pulled, with the physical evidence of him grabbing her, we've got a strong case. He's looking at actual prison time. Jason leaned back in his chair. How long? Assault, possession of a deadly weapon, violation of previous restraining orders, stalking charges. If the prosecutor pushes for maximum sentences, he could get 4 to 7 years. Not long enough. No, Detective Michaels agreed. It never is, but it's something. It's time for Emma to rebuild her life without looking over her shoulder every minute. There was a soft knock on the door, and another officer stuck his head in. Sir, there's a situation developing outside. Press has gotten wind of who's here. Jason groaned softly. How bad? About 20 reporters with cameras. They want a statement. Detective Michael stood. You can go out the back if you prefer. We can arrange a car. Jason considered it for a moment, then shook his head. No. If me talking to them keeps the focus on domestic violence rather than celebrity gossip, I'll do it. 20 minutes later, Jason stood at the top of the police station steps, microphones thrust toward him like weapons. Camera flashes created artificial daylight. Reporters shouted questions over each other, a cacophony of voices demanding answers. Jason raised his hand and waited until they quieted. When he spoke, his voice was clear and firm. This afternoon, I witnessed a man assault a young woman in an alley off Oxford Street. I intervened because it was the right thing to do. That's not heroism. That's basic human decency. The real story here isn't about me. It's about Emma Clark, a brave young woman who found the courage to leave an abusive relationship and defend herself when her abuser wouldn't let her go. He paused, making eye contact with several reporters. Domestic violence is an epidemic. 2 women a week are killed by current or former partners in this country. Thousands more suffer in silence, trapped by fear, manipulation, and a system that doesn't always protect them. Emma's story isn't unique. It's happening right now in every neighborhood, every city, every community. Mr. Statham, did you use your martial arts training to subdue the attacker? One reporter called out. I used the minimum force necessary to protect someone in danger. That's what anyone with the ability to help should do. Are you worried about legal repercussions? No. I acted in defense of another person who was in immediate danger. The law is clear on that. Another reporter pushed forward. Emma Clark has agreed to speak with us. She says you saved her life today. Jason felt uncomfortable with the praise. I did what needed doing. But the person who saved Emma's life was Emma. She's the one who found the strength to leave. She's the one who stood up to her abuser despite being terrified. She's the one who called the police and agreed to testify. She's the hero of this story, not me. What would you say to other victims of domestic violence? Jason thought carefully before answering. I'd say you're not alone. I'd say it's not your fault. I'd say that leaving is the hardest and bravest thing you can do. And I'd say there are people who will help you. Organizations, shelters, hotlines. You don't have to face this alone. He rattled off several domestic violence helpline numbers from memory, numbers he'd looked up over the years when never news stories about abuse triggered memories of his childhood. One more question, Mr. Statham. Do you think you'll maintain contact with Emma Clark? That's up to her. If she wants support, I'm available. But I'm not trying to insert myself into her life. She needs space to heal, to rebuild, to remember who she was before someone tried to destroy her spirit. Jason ended the impromptu press conference and went back inside, where Emma was just finishing her own statement. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from crying, but there was something different in her posture now, a straightness to her spine that hadn't been there in the alley. Thank you, she said when she saw him, for everything. You don't need to thank me. Just promise me you'll get proper support. Counseling, therapy, whatever you need. The detective gave me some resources. I'm going to call them tomorrow. Jason pulled out his phone and opened his notes app. I'm going to give you my assistant's number. If you need anything, legal support, housing assistance, job references, anything, call her. She knows to make you a priority. Emma's eyes widened. You don't have to do that. I know I don't have to. I want to. 3 months later, Jason sat in a television studio, the bright lights making him squint slightly as a morning show host settled into her chair across from him. He'd agreed to do the interview on one condition, that Emma would be allowed to share her story in her own words first. The monitor showed Emma in a separate studio, composed and chloride. She'd cut her hair short, a symbolic fresh start she'd told Jason when they'd met for coffee the week before. Her therapy was going well. She'd moved to a new flat in a different part of London. She was taking night classes in psychology, thinking she might want to help other survivors someday. The day Jason intervened changed my life, Emma told the camera. Not just because he stopped Derek from hurting me that day, but because he showed me that I deserve protection. That someone who didn't even know me thought my safety was worth fighting for. When you're in an abusive relationship, your abuser convinces you that you're worthless, that you deserve the treatment you're getting. Having a stranger risk himself to keep me safe shattered that lie. The host nodded sympathetically. Derek Turner was sentenced to 6 years in prison 2 weeks ago. How did that feel? Relieving, Emma said, but also sobering. Because I know there are thousands of women going through exactly what I went through. Women who don't have someone like Jason walking by at the right moment. Women who don't survive their attempts to leave. The camera switched to Jason. The host leaned forward. Mr. Statham, the incident in the alley has sparked a nationwide conversation about bystander intervention. What are your thoughts on that? People are scared to get involved, Jason said. And I understand that. There's risk in confronting violent situations. But there's also risk in doing nothing. We've created a society where people feel it's not their place to interfere, even when they are witnessing obvious injustice. What changed for you? What made you decide to intervene? Jason was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. I grew up watching my mother struggle with difficult relationships. I was too young then to fully understand what was happening, but I remember feeling powerless. As I got older, I promised myself I'd never be powerless again. I'd never watch someone suffer and tell myself it wasn't my business. Some critics have said you use excessive force, that you could have simply called the police. Jason's expression hardened slightly. The police response time in central London averages 8 minutes. Emma had maybe 8 seconds before Derek's fist connected with her skull. You don't wait for help when someone's life is in immediate danger. You become the help. You've since established the Safe Streets Foundation, dedicated to teaching self-defense and bystander intervention techniques. Tell us about that. It's about empowerment, Jason explained. Teaching people, particularly women, how to recognize warning signs of abuse, how to defend themselves if necessary, and how to intervene safely if they witness violence. We're not trying to create vigilantes. We're trying to create aware, prepared citizens who won't turn a blind eye. The host shuffled her notes. The foundation has already trained over 5,000 people in 3 months. That's remarkable. It's a start. We've partnered with domestic violence shelters, community centers, schools. We're offering free training to anyone who wants it. The response has been overwhelming. Emma, you become involved with the foundation as well. Emma nodded on the screen. I'm training to become an instructor. I want to help other women find their strength before they're in the position I was in. If I can save even one person from going through what I went through, everything I suffered will have meaning. The interview continued for another 10 minutes, covering the legal reforms Jason was advocating for, the changes in police response protocols being considered, the cultural shift needed to address domestic violence seriously. After the cameras stopped rolling, Jason's phone buzzed with messages. His publicist, warning him about the media storm this would create. His agent, half excited about the positive press, half worried about him being typecast as an activist rather than an actor. His business manager, noting the financial commitment of the foundation. But there was one message that mattered more than all the others. It was from Emma, just 3 words. Thank you, always. Jason replied, Thank you for trusting me. Proud of you. He pocketed his phone and headed out of the studio, nodding to the security guard who held the door. Outside, London continued a perpetual motion, millions of people pursuing their individual dramas, dreams, and struggles. Somewhere in the city, someone was being hurt. Somewhere else, someone was finding the courage to leave. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere a person was choosing not to walk past, choosing to be the help instead of waiting for it. Jason didn't know if his actions that day in the alley would truly change anything on a grand scale. Systems were stubborn things, resistant to reform. Culture shifted slowly, reluctantly, but he knew it had changed everything for Emma. And he knew that word was spreading, carried by news reports and social media posts and conversations in coffee shops and living rooms. People were talking about domestic violence who'd never discussed it before. They were asking themselves what they would do if confronted with a similar situation. A week after the interview, Jason received a letter forwarded by his management company. The handwriting was shaky but determined. Dear Mr. Statham, you don't know me, but I want you to know that watching your interview gave me the courage to leave my abusive husband after 12 years. I called the number you mentioned on the show. They helped me find a shelter, connected me with a lawyer, gave me hope when I thought I had none left. I'm safe now. My children are safe now. Thank you for showing me that people can be good, that help exists, that I deserve better. You saved Emma's life that day in the alley, but you saved mine too. And probably hundreds of others you'll never know about. That matters. That changes the world. Gratefully, a survivor. Jason read the letter 3 times, then carefully folded it and placed it in his desk drawer next to Emma's thank you card and the newspaper clippings about Derek Turner's sentencing. These were the moments that mattered more than box office numbers or action sequences or Hollywood premieres. These were the moments that reminded him why physical training wasn't just about looking good on camera or performing stunts. It was about being capable when capability was needed. It was about being the kind of person who didn't walk past suffering. It was about understanding that real strength wasn't measured in how hard you could hit, but in how fiercely you would protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Outside his window, the sun was setting over London, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new moments where character would be tested. But tonight, Jason allowed himself to feel satisfied with one simple truth. When the moment came, when violence erupted and a stranger needed help, he hadn't walked past. He'd stepped forward, and that had made all the difference.